My name is Eleanor McDaniel. I'm coming today to talk to you about some important issues regarding our tribe. Uh, I recently took out a petition, and I'm holding a petition drive. But the purpose of the petition is to uphold the supreme power and authority of the tribal council. And because we've had a lot of corrupt actions in our tribe by our tribal leaders recently, a lot of things are going on that hasn't been good for our nation and our people. We've seen a lot of terminations within the tribe, a lot of change. We've had whole departments removed from their job. We've had a lot of our tribal laws, our ordinances just wiped out, so that our tribe uh, is far removed from what it used to be. There were amendments that were imposed by the CBC that made it impossible to take out a petition to recall them. We were required to have 1,500 signatures on a petition, which is 1,500. I think we barely get that many to vote in any of our general elections. So that was totally unfair. But this petition is not only to uphold the tribal council and its supreme authority and powers, but also to discourage unethical, dishonest, and fraudulent actions of the Comanche Tribal Business Committee. So I wanted to tell you about the particulars, and when I come out to the community, I'm looking for your support, and so I want to let you know exactly what this petition is for. But during General Council, we have our annual General Council every April, the third Saturday in April, and it usually starts about 1:30. But what I'd like to see changed is that we start at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I think that's important so that it gives us more time to conduct all the business that we need to do. Later on in the afternoon, when we start late, people get there and they're already tired, and then the business is cut short because we lose a quorum. And to me, that's a tactic of the business committee, so that we don't get an opportunity to discuss some of the business that we need to talk about. So I think moving the meeting to 10 a.m. in the morning would give us more time to discuss important business of the tribe. Also, I want to see the tribal council approve an agenda so that we have a say in what we're going to discuss, and that we are not going to be prevented by the CBC to discuss the businesses that we want to talk about. For example, the budget. They present the budget to us, and they present it to us in a hurry, and we have no opportunity to discuss it. And the reason why I think we should have an opportunity to discuss business, because there's things that we need to see happen, and we need to have a say in how our tribal funding is spent. For example, we've had gaming um, for the past 36 years. We've had an income of well over 50 million every year, and that's what we vote on when it comes to the budget. And we need to discuss these things because in those 36 years, we've not built one home with that money. We really don't have much to show for it. Um, so we need to start talking about better ways of spending our money. And we need to talk about spending that money in a way that it would improve the quality of life of our of all our people. Um, we've not seen much happen for our children when they're going to school. We have the elders get a payment, and when a student graduates after high school, we have higher education programs that can help them go to college. But our school age youth, um, they might get a little Walmart card to go buy some school supplies and maybe a pair of new shoes to start the year. But I think we need to discuss. We have approximately 4,000 school age youth. And if we were to give them a $500 stipend to start school with, they might be able to buy a computer. So for $500 for each school age youth times 4,000, that would be like $2 million. And our CBC have sneezed away $2 million all the time. We see that go out the window and nothing to show for it. But we really need to start taking a look at giving our school age youth a $500 or more stipend to start school. The dropout rate is so high. We need to keep them in school. Some of our leaders are always talking about our kids going to college, and providing for themselves, getting good jobs. But that's not going to happen until we get them graduated out of high school. Keep them in school and help them to graduate. So things like these, housing, education help for our school age kids, taking care of our elders, like a nursing home. Right now, we can only take, I bet it's under 20 people at our assisted living center. We need more than that. Our elder population is growing every day, every year. So we really need to look at a full-fledged nursing home. We have so many people right now, the waiting list is long, and they need to be there because they need that care. They need that special care. So these are the things that we need to have an opportunity to discuss in the tribal council meeting, but that's never allowed to us because the CBC control the agenda, and they control what we're going to discuss and won't allow us to amend the agenda. So next, the tribal council shall accept nominations from the floor. That is already in our Constitution, where anyone that wants to run for office, we do nominations during the annual general council. But we need to make sure that it's clear that all candidates must be nominated during the annual meeting in order to be recognized as a candidate for office. Recently, we've gotten people that came out of nowhere on the ballot without having been nominated during general council. So we have rules, and we really need to stick to those. Um, it's just not fair, and our laws have to be fair. Like I said, we need to approve or disapprove the proposed annual budget. And we need to have an opportunity to discuss it. We are here, we call this meeting, and I know that a lot of our tribal members that live out of state most of the time can't make this meeting, but they do have an opportunity to come if they would make the arrangements and take the time to be here. But this is our meeting, this is our general council, and this is where we conduct the business of the tribe. So that we need to be able to discuss the budget. We, like I said, we should be allowed to add things. There are things on that budget that don't really work, and we should discuss those things. One of those things is every year the amount of millions of dollars is being spent on law enforcement. This past year, we approved $3 million for law enforcement. And one of the things is that law enforcement is a 638 program. So it is funded by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so they get millions from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Do we really need to spend that $3 million that's on the budget for law enforcement if they are already getting millions from the Bureau of Indian Affairs? Most of the law enforcement are divas. If we could train our people, if we could spend some of that money, if they're going to get that much money, we need to spend some of that $3 million on training our own to be law enforcement. But all I see are non-Comanches with wearing that Comanche badge. But these are the kinds of things that we should be allowed to discuss in the tribal council meeting. We meet once a year, and we need time to discuss important business of the tribe. The other thing I want to see is that the tribal chairman shall call a special tribal council meeting when so requested by 200 eligible voters. The CBC imposed amendments when Willie Nelson took office. They imposed a secretarial election that changed our Constitution so that it required like 10% of the total voters of the tribe, which is, more like 14,000 voters, and 10% of that is almost 1,500 voters that have to sign that petition. And that is not fair. And that's an impossible number of signatures on a petition. And I think one reason for that was because the petitions, some of them are for their recall, so that they are trying to stop or prevent themselves from being recalled by making that an impossible number of signatures on a petition. Well, lots of times when a petition is finished, it's a bona fide petition, the chairman is supposed to call a meeting. But too many times they've would just not call the meeting. And so we've had bona fide petitions and they just ignore it and never call the meeting. Well, that's the duties and responsibilities of the chairman. Should the chairman refuse to call the tribal council meeting when duly requested, he should forfeit his position, resulting in a vacancy to be filled immediately. Then 5 members of the CBC, then 5 members shall be authorized to call a special meeting. The chairman shall not be allowed to ignore the will of the Comanche people and his duties and responsibilities that are given to him by his office. And so I think that it's important that if he does not follow through by the will of the people and he doesn't do his job, then he needs to go. A legal quorum of the tribal council shall consist of 200 eligible voters. That needs to go back to what it was. Tribal council meetings, they're required a legal quorum of 150 right now. But I think that 200, it needs to be changed from 150 to 200 eligible voters to make a legal quorum in order to provide a greater representation of voters when we're conducting business for the nation and all its members. 16,000 members, and for only 150 people to conduct business, I think 200 would better represent our people. A quorum of the tribal council shall consist of 200 eligible voters. So then we would change the legal quorum from 150 to 200 in order to provide a greater representation of voters when conducting business for the nation and all of its members. So these amendments, this amendment is what I'm proposing. Votes taken during tribal council meeting shall be at the discretion of the chairman, be by standing vote or by ballot. And in order to save time, a standing vote may be necessary and not necessarily require a secret ballot. There are some things that, are okay to vote on when we're voting in general council, an open vote. But it would be at the judgment call of the chairman and the will of the people to decide whether we're going to do a standing vote or go ahead and do a secret ballot, because every secret ballot takes time. We have to set up the machine, the voting machine, then we all have to get in line, and it takes time. When we could do a standing vote, that's not going to, hurt anybody. So, but it would make things go a little quicker. But that's something that the chairman could, it would be at his discretion and by the will of the people. So we would agree to do a standing vote or a secret ballot. Then the tribal council need to authorize expenditure of funds, which may be deposited to the exclusive credit to the Comanche Nation, and that would include Comanche Nation Gaming, all Comanche Nation enterprises, agencies, and funds which may deposit it to the joint credit of the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache tribes. The tribal council must require that all financial assets of the tribe be accounted for and reported to all members. We've never gotten a report on gaming. The actual money that we make, not just what they give us for the budget, but the total amount, because there's a gross amount and then all we see is the net amount. We don't know what they're actually using for expenses and whatever else they're doing. They never tell us. But any proposals with our gaming should be presented to the tribal council for final approval or disapproval, and this just doesn't happen. Not only in the gaming, but also in housing. They tend to say that housing is separate from the tribe, but housing does have Comanche Nation housing. If it wasn't Comanche Nation, or if it's not, then take Comanche Nation off of it. But that needs to be reported to us, what's happening at the housing authority. We also need to know what's happening with any enterprises within the tribe. There's this ghost company called Comanche Nation Construction. They've never reported anything about that Comanche Nation construction to the tribal council. They've never sought final approval or disapproval of any of their activities with this construction company. So if they're going to continue with it, the least they can do is be accountable for it and report it to the tribal council. The tribal council has been left in the dark far too long. During each tribal council meeting, in the past years, we have always hired a tribal administrator right there at General Council. And then Monday, that TA takes his job. Well, Willie Nelson changed that. And so he put it on the ballot and called it a worldwide election. But that was always how we've done things. And so now we've gotten into political issues with the election in hiring our tribal administrator. So we need to keep it simple. Go back to hiring, not electing the tribal administrator during General Council. And I want to make sure that the tribal administrator shall be under the direction of the business committee, but the business committee shall not take any action to circumvent the powers and authorities of the tribal council to suspend, remove, or fire the TA. So many times the tribal administrator is under the thumbs of the CBC and are threatened with suspension or termination. That tribal administrator needs to be allowed to do their job. And if they feel like that tribal administrator needs to be removed, then bring it to the tribal council. We're the ones who hired him, and we're the ones that should fire them. And it's for 1 year. So if they're not working out, then come April, the following April, then we will look to hire a new tribal administrator. The other thing with the tribal administrator, members of the business committee shall not be employees of the tribal government, meaning that the CBC shall have no power over tribal employees. And a lot of times they do. They roundabout in their political business or manipulation, they tell the tribal administrator who to hire and fire. So they need to keep their hands out of the business of tribal operations. They're policymakers only. They can propose policies for us. They can propose ordinances for us, but they have no business or shouldn't have any authority over the employees of the tribe. During each tribal council meeting, we shall hire an attorney to represent the tribe in legal matters. The tribal attorney shall not represent any member of the business committee in any legal matter pertaining to the CBC's position. So we're tired of the CBC when they are when they're wrongdoing. They don't need to spend or use the resources of the tribe by having our tribal attorney represent them for their wrongdoing. That has to stop. Those attorneys are costing us too much money. Every CBC meeting, we see those tribal attorneys sitting there. And when the CBC are getting in trouble, they're going to turn to the attorneys and for their opinion. And most of the time, those tribal attorneys have no power and authority over the business of the tribe. That duty and responsibility lies with the CBC, so that the CBC should know their constitution. They should know how to interpret that constitution and be able to conduct the business of the tribe under that constitution, not constantly asking the tribal attorneys for their opinion when they can't do anything anyway. So you see those tribal attorneys in the CBC meeting, and they're charging the tribe by the hour. So what is it really costing us? We have to ask ourselves, what is it really costing us to have those attorneys sit there in the CBC meeting? So, anyway, we have to have a say in who's going to represent us. And we usually hire and fire the tribal attorney in general council. So we need to go back to that. It's simpler. Then we don't get into the politics of hiring and firing a tribal attorney. During each annual tribal council meeting, we also need to look at appointing an election board chairman. The CBC have manipulated the government by taking away our election board. In 2005, the tribal council voted to put in 12 elected election board members. And in a memo by 3 CBC, they got rid or ousted our elected election board. We need that election board because it's got to be impartial. They've got to run our election process fairly and securely. We need to safeguard those rights to vote for who's going to lead our tribe and how we are going to spend our tribal funding. So we need to safeguard those rights as much as possible. And so we will go back to an election board, and rather than going through the process of electing them every year like we did before, the tribal council shall appoint an election board chairman, and then that chairman in turn shall select his election board, and that election board shall be approved by the CBC. So we need to go back to an election board. Um, I am just really tired of seeing these non-Comanches, when we go vote, all these non-Comanches sitting there running our elections. That is just, it's not right. Um, you don't see a uh, 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 a member of the Chinese nation running the elections of the United States. So we don't need to see any non-Comanches running our Comanche Nation elections. We appoint them. We'll put them there. The other thing is that the CBC, under these new amendments, shall not conduct business unless it's in an open forum. Um, all private business shall be directed to another appropriate forum. If it's regarding an elder, then we need to set it up with social services. The social services should step in and take care of that elder. What I'm saying is that there are more appropriate uh, forums that can address some of these issues that have to be discussed in private. For example, children. We have a children's court. Uh, Employees. They should have some sort of forum for the employees to take um, their grievances or their complaints. It should never be brought to the CBC, because the CBC should never be. They don't have authority over employees. They are only policymakers. So they have a different job, not to run um, 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 personnel. Uh, so that the CBC shall not conduct any business in an executive session. Everything needs to be in an open forum. And if you can't discuss it there, then you need to take it somewhere else. The CBC shall present annual budgets to the Tribal Council for final consideration as to approval or disapproval for the financing of Comanche tribal operations, Comanche Nation agencies. For example, the tribal housing, it's an agency of the tribe. Comanche Nation Gaming and other enterprises, for example, the Comanche Nation Construction. Tribal Council must require that all financial assets of the tribe, down to the last penny, should be accounted for and reported to all members of the tribe, because we have a direct uh, it directly affects all of us. Everything, that all the monies, all the funds, and how it's spent, uh, it directly affects all of us. So we should have a direct say, and it should be all accounted for and reported to us. CBC shall submit proposed annual budgets for the financing of Comanche tribal operations, agencies of the Comanche Nation, Comanche Nation Gaming, and other enterprises of the Comanche Nation, and it shall be disseminated to tribal members 45 days prior to the annual meeting. The Tribal Council must require that all financial assets of the tribe be accounted for and reported to all members before Tribal Council, so that we have an opportunity to review it, and if we have to, bring it up in Tribal Council. No CBC member shall serve on any subcommittee. Lots of times these CBC members appoint themselves on these subcommittees. The CBC shall not delegate a job that is already theirs in order to financially benefit themselves from their own appointment. That's why they were elected, to do this job. And so they can't delegate to themselves a job that is already theirs. The CBC shall no longer promulgate laws. CBC shall not be able to change the law to suit their agenda. For example, they made these amendments where we had to have an impossible amount of signatures on petitions so that we couldn't recall them. Candidates must be nominated from the floor during general council meetings in order to be recognized as a candidate. If you can't get up there and stand before your people and be nominated, then we really don't want you to run for office. All nominees that meet qualifications as defined under the Constitution shall not be prevented to compete for election to office. Willie Nelson and his CBC made up all these rules that if you owed the tribe money, if you couldn't pass a drug test, then you couldn't run for office. There were a whole list of things that would prevent a person from running for office. But that wasn't in the Constitution. None of these things were in the Constitution. But he added them on his own so that he could stop people that he thought shouldn't run. He did everything he could to stop these people, and he did stop them running for office. And so they were willing and able people ready to serve their tribe, but Willie Nelson thought he knew better, thought it was up to him to make those rules, but it's not. It's in our Constitution. It's there, and he don't need to supplement it. You know, it's easier to run for the President of the United States than it is to run for office for the Comanche tribe. It's unfair, and it's unethical, and it's dishonest. You know, he's misinterpreting the Constitution and misleading the people. And so that has to change. It all has to stop. We've got to have a fair government that's going to serve all of us fairly. Should an incumbent of the Comanche Business Committee accept a nomination at an annual tribal council meeting as a candidate for a different office, that individual shall be required to resign the business committee position which he then holds. Such resignation shall be effective upon the date of nomination. Right now, it's not effective until after the election process. But the way these things go right now, our elections go on and on and on because of political manipulation. Well, that person that's running for a different office gets to stay there and gets to sit on the CBC and continue to make dishonest, unethical, and fraudulent actions. Well, once they're nominated for a different office, then they need to just leave. That resignation needs to be effective immediately. As soon as they're nominated, they're gone. And then that, for example, in general council, when we're taking nominations, once they resign, then we can take nominations for that position right then and there, and that position will be filled when we complete our election process. Not allow these people to continue on and on and on, and these elections be drawn out, and they're still conducting unethical business. The Comanche Tribal Council may, at a meeting duly called specifically for the purpose, recall any officer or committeeman for neglect of duty or conduct that has brought disrepute upon the tribe. Such meeting shall not be unless a petition signed by 200 eligible voters of the tribe requesting recall is submitted to the chairman. So we're going to go back to what it was originally required, 200 signatures, not this unfair and impossible number of 10% of the voters of the tribe. We don't even have that many people voting in a general election, so that's not fair. The recall of one officer and one committeeman may be initiated per meeting called for this purpose. So if we got two people in there that's maybe a chairman or a vice chairman or a secretary treasurer, they can be recalled at this meeting. And also, if we have CBC number 1, CBC number 2, CBC number 3, or CBC number 4 that needs to be recalled, we can do that in the same meeting. So we're saying that one officer and one committeeman can be recalled at the same meeting, not have to have a meeting after meeting after meeting. Any person recalled from office as a result of the actions of the tribal council shall forfeit the right to seek election to any position on the business committee for a period of 10 years. Right now it's 3 years, but I think when they're recalled, then they need to be gone for an extensive period of time. Right now, we recalled Bob Tipicani. We recalled Ron Ridout, but they're still sitting there doing the same unethical, dishonest, and fraudulent actions as what they were doing when they were previously there. We shouldn't be seeing them sitting there doing that. They should have stayed gone for longer. They shouldn't even be back. But we need to change that so that it's a 10-year period and not just a 3-year period that they're gone after they've been recalled. A relative of a member of the Comanche Tribal Business Committee to include, and this is the wife or husband, the spouse, the mother, the father, the son, the daughter, sister, and brother. We're not talking second cousin, aunts, uncles. We're talking about the immediate family of the CBC shall not be employed or hold office within the Comanche tribal governmental system. So we're talking relatives, immediate family members sitting on the CBC. And we're talking about being hired in any tribal enterprise, like if we these enterprises, these other businesses that we have, um, tribal enterprise, tribal agency like the housing authority, or any of the subcommittees. Those immediate relatives should not sit in these positions. Nepotism. It seems like, oh well, they're Comanche, our tribe isn't that big. They're not going to hurt anything. But nepotism is a form of abuse, and it also is a personal benefit. It's a personal benefit to that CBC member and their immediate family. We've got 2 family members on the CBC. We've had them before, and we have them now. But in the future, we need to look at changing that, because on the CBC, that vote, those 2 votes are going to benefit their agenda. And if they hire their family, that's a personal benefit to them and their family. And that is abuse of authority, and is taking advantage over other members of the tribe. So we want to discourage unethical, We don't want to be mean. We're not trying to be mean. But we want to discourage unethical, which means it's not going to be unlegal or illegal, but it's unfair and it's just not right. That's what unethical means. They might not be breaking the law, but they are just not doing it the right way. Whether it's on the CBC or whether it's hiring your family members within the tribal government, whether it's for gaming, whether it's for Comanche Nation housing. We currently have a court that was established without the final approval of the tribal council. The law imposed under the court is brand new. They're creating law every day, new law every day. And it has a lot of flaws, and it's written, a lot of it has been written to benefit the CBC and not benefit the people that are subject to that law. It's directly imposed on us, and we're the ones paying for it. The cost of the Comanche Nation Court is big, and we have to pay expensive lawyers ourselves to represent us in that court. The Comanche tribe never granted jurisdiction to the CFR court, and that is why the CFR court never could adjudicate anything in their court. For example, issues regarding our elections, issues regarding intertribal disputes. CFR court always kicked them back because they don't have jurisdiction for taking care of business for the Comanche tribe. So Comanche Nation shall by these amendments grant the Court of Indian Offenses civil and criminal court jurisdiction. So by that, the Court of Indian Offenses, or CFR court, shall take jurisdiction over all civil actions arising within the jurisdiction of the court, to include election disputes, shall take jurisdiction over any suit against the tribe, or adjudicate any internal tribal government dispute. All tribal ordinances, for example, our petition ordinances, our gaming ordinances, our election ordinances, our tax ordinances, all tribal ordinances adopted by the tribal council and approved by the Secretary of Interior or his designee shall be enforceable in the Court of Indian Offenses. So if we have any disputes, any of those areas, the CFR court shall be granted jurisdiction to enforce all of our Constitution and all of our ordinances. The Court of Indian Offenses, or CFR court, shall have criminal jurisdiction over any action by a person that has made a criminal offense within the jurisdiction of the court. Where now we shall have a court that will prosecute wrongdoers. We've had people take money, embezzle money from the tribe. They've take wrongful actions against people, like when they ordered me out of the tribal council meeting. Dragged me out and broke my leg. I really had no recourse. There was no fair recourse. The current courts right now are under the thumb of the CBC. So really, if um, it's not good for the CBC, then you're not going to see any fair treatment. So let's change all this. Make this better for our people. Make it fair. And we want to see an improvement in the quality of life of every member of this tribe. I'm a full-blood member of the Comanche Nation, and that's always been important to me. I've always been active and involved in what goes on in our tribe. And now I'm a grandmother. I have 3 grandchildren. I'm a great-grandmother. I have 6 great-grandchildren. And I have brothers and sisters. Probably, I think altogether, I have close to 20 brothers and sisters right now. Living brothers and sisters. My dad married his first wife is Comanche. My mother was Comanche. He married a Shoshone woman in Wyoming. And from those relationships, there's over 20 children. And from that, there's hundreds of grandchildren. And from that, there's hundreds of great-grandchildren. All Comanche. All important to me. My grandparents were good to me, and I want to see all of our elders treated well and well cared for. I'm grateful we have our funeral home. It's like one of the 2 greatest events in your life is when you're born, and we need to take care of our babies. And the other major event in your life, or the greatest event in your life, is when you pass. And we should be put away with dignity. And I'm happy we have that. But we need to do more. We need to constantly improve the quality of life of our people and give every family a home, a place where they can hang grandma's picture and grandpa's picture and know where they came from and not have to sleep on anyone's floor or anyone's couch or go open an empty refrigerator. We have to improve the quality of life of our people and create a clear and fair government. And so I leave this with you, and I ask that you contact me. My phone number is 580-483-6864, and let's change the Constitution to improve it and provide a better government for the Comanche Nation and all its members. Ura.